Everybody, welcome to another episode of Ben on the Fen. As you can hear, birds are singing. You can probably see the sunshine is coming down on another beautiful Friday morning. Been very lucky with the lives the last few weeks. It has been glorious sunshine. If you were to speak to some of my agricultural clients, that isn't quite so good. They need a bit more water, unless they're a farming contractor, in which case they're making tons of money doing irrigation work. Anyway, this morning I am delighted to be joined by yet another guest, and this week it is Oliver Denison of NRG Solutions. They're a company at the forefront helping businesses reduce their carbon footprint and embrace sustainable energy solutions. Whether you're a business owner looking to cut your energy bills or you're curious about the future of renewables, you're in for a valuable and insightful conversation. So grab yourself a coffee, and if you've got any questions, drop them in the chat, and then Oliver will ask them overwards. So I will introduce you to Oliver.
Good morning. I'm Oliver Denison, Director of NRG Solutions. We're a technical energy consultancy based on supporting businesses with their sustainability journeys. As a company, we've been operating coming up 2 years actually in October, which has gone incredibly fast. Operate from 2 home offices, one in Dereham, one in Kings Lynn. And we cover a number of services such as energy procurement, carbon reporting, energy auditing, and scoping of renewable technology. So a whole host of services to support businesses with their sustainable journeys. And yeah, for me as a business owner, I'm really proud in the current climate to help companies, because when we think of sustainability at the moment, it's such a big talking point. I was just discussing with Ben some of the sort of issues in the industry at the moment. Anyone familiar with the energy sector will probably be seeing prices that are constantly rising, constantly falling. They'll be coupled with challenges of people saying, what are you doing to be sustainable? They'll be looking at how they can cut costs. So, are they operating efficiently? Are they using machinery efficiently? Is the heating system working? Is it efficient? And so, yeah, it brings along a whole host of questions, really.
Which we're going to get into now.
Yes.
We have, as always, I do have a few pre-planned questions. I'm not just springing these on Oliver this morning. He has had a bit of a heads up. So we'll get into these, have a bit of a discussion around them. If anybody wants to comment about what we're talking about, please do. And again, like I say, we'll follow up on any comments afterwards. So Oliver, first of all, can you tell me what inspired you to start NRG Solutions, and what has your journey in the energy sector looked like so far?
Wow. So let me take you back then. So I first started my career in insurance and done my A-levels coming out of school and decided that I wanted to be in insurance. Spent 6 years there and realised it just wasn't for me. It wasn't quite exciting, became a bit lost. And at the time, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I then went travelling, and that changed everything for me. So I went travelling to Australia back in 2014. Anyone familiar with energy and renewables will know that Australia, they're leaders to a certain degree on the renewables front. Lots of exciting things happening over there. And
thank you.
Yeah, got the opportunity to work for Sydney Construction Group, doing things like lighting, even hydraulic car lifts in the Sydney and Melbourne CBDs, which was challenging, but also exciting. And that gave me a bit of a taste for the trade. Also covered off some renewables, and also learned a little bit about the energy markets. Obviously, not so different to how they are here. Then came back and got a job at the largest procurement agricultural cooperative in the UK. And that was working in the energy team, predominantly dealing with the procurement of electricity, gas and water contracts. Involved sort of new connections, the energisation of supplies, but predominantly working with farmers, estates, all across the UK. And for me, I found it absolutely fascinating. Don't get me wrong, when I first got into it, it was complex. People said, Ollie, you need a good 6 to 12 months to even understand how things work. And it was hit things like when we were doing energy contracts, because if anybody gets involved in the technicalities, say for instance, if it's a new connection, you'll hear terms of, well, is it single phase, is it three phase, what's the size of amps, CT ratio. And I knew a little bit of this from my time, obviously, in Australia. But for me, it was like, well, how does all this work? You know, how does it? You know, I really wanted to get to that sort of that technical understanding. And at the time, renewables, it was a really interesting time for renewables, because solar, this is back in 2016. Solar, obviously, feed-in tariff, there was a number of people who were benefiting from the feed-in tariff, so they had installations that really paid for themselves 2 or 3 times over. And so we were working with a lot of renewable generators. We were working with people who'd invested in wind crop. I won't speak too much about that, but we all know what happened there with the wind turbines. And for me, it was, well, technically, how does all this work? And I spent my time in the evenings whilst working there, pushing, trying to further my knowledge, really trying to make myself a source of knowledge, whether it was in the department I worked in or other colleagues that I was working with. And as times developed, I got the opportunity to be more customer facing, so to go out on farms, on sites, see that in motion, solar surveys. Not so much EV at the time, because EV was obviously quite fresh, but to sort of get that real taste in renewables. And I got a highlight. I really, I worked with 2 incredible energy managers at the time. They'd both probably be watching, but really great guys who rubbed off on me. I spent all of my time learning from them to try and be the best that I could be. So I've got to thank these guys. And
I think I'll chip in here. That has been a common theme with other guests that I've had on here, where they've spent time with leading people in the industry, people who've got knowledge, to basically quench their own thirst for knowledge. And that's how we all learn, isn't it? That's all we all learn.
100%. And, because I'd had that interest, I first had that career in insurance where I wasn't so interested, and then, gained that passion for energy. It gave me then the ability to push myself. And sometimes, we always say it's the people we surround ourselves with. And, I was really lucky that just everybody, from a colleague perspective, even from a boss perspective at the time, or the 2 bosses I had, were great and allow me to push myself, allow me to develop. So that really helped. And yeah, as I said, so in my latter years there, I spent time more out on site, whether it was selling projects, whether it was surveying. And again, just understanding some of the new technologies that were coming to the market. And appreciate this is a bit long-winded, but from there I then got the opportunity to work at a local energy broker, which was absolutely incredible. A company that sort of put its customers first, really focused on doing things correctly, and spent a lovely 2.5 years there. On the side, decided that I wanted to train a bit more in energy management, so doing courses to really further myself with energy auditing. And whilst I was there, we released a number of different products such as carbon reporting and renewables consultancy, which was great. It was great to bring something nice to that business, but also their clients. And actually, was involved in a lot of successful projects. So that then gave me the ability where I said, well, I think I was 34 at the time, I want to start doing this myself.
Yeah.
and felt confident. Had a lot of people around me support me, and yeah, launched NRG Solutions. And now we're a company that with a growing client base from Norfolk, West Norfolk, all the way across North Norfolk, Suffolk, and it's continuing with some really exciting things happening.
Yeah, fantastic, good stuff. That's all right, Ollie. You don't need to apologise. We all know you like to talk. So, obviously, NRG Solutions supports local businesses in Norfolk and beyond. But what do you actually do with them to help them with their sustainability goals?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. So, yeah, I'll get various different, obviously, clients approach me. Typically, there's three sorts of clients. Those who want to cut their energy costs. So it's, hi Oliver, we just can't afford our energy bills. We need to look at getting them down. Now, whether that's by energy auditing, so looking at how they can be a bit more savvy about how they're operating their business, or whether that's the investment into renewable technologies to lower demand. The second one is I get those who want to have a positive impact on the environment. So they may need to carbon report, they may need to have a carbon baseline and reduction plan for tender framework, for funding from the council, or they may just be really passionate about their impact and their emissions. And then thirdly, it's actually those who want to make money. So landowners who say, okay, we've got brown land, we think we've got a connection to the grid, we want solar, and we want to sell back to the grid, and we want to use it as a sort of an investment or a retirement plan. It could be battery storage, numerous technologies. So they're the three sorts, and from that, it's really deciphering what the client wants, because everyone's on their own individual journey. And as I said, we cater for 4 different types of products, and often clients, if they come with us for carbon reporting, that we'll end up doing their procurement, we'll end up helping them with an energy audit, because we know getting their demand down is going to have a positive effect on their carbon report, and we're assisting that renewable technology project. So really all combined. So it depends on that first interaction of what that client's looking to do. Even if it is just, Ollie, I need an energy contract, I want you to help me out with this. It always follows on with something else.
Yeah, fantastic, good stuff. Right, slightly controversial one here, which not everybody agrees with. I know this from seeing various political posts on social media, and even our politicians don't agree on this, but the UK is on a major push towards net zero. How much of a contribution to the world's emissions that makes leaves a lot to be seen, but how important is carbon reporting for businesses today, and how do you help them get started on that journey?
Wow, yeah, I think it's really important. Look, there is that whole question, because the rest of the world, China, India, Russia, are they pulling their weight in this? Do they believe in it? USA, since Donald Trump. And then what you've got is the UK and Europe trying to be leaders, particularly Scandinavian countries, who doing a fantastic job. But I think something has to be done. And, the UK, we've got this roadmap, we've got this 2050 net zero roadmap. Whether people like it or not, it's in place. Are we going to achieve it? I think there's a long, long way to go to achieve it. And I think those who work on the ground and deal with this on a day-to-day basis and actually understand, Ben, and actually people like yourselves who work closely with businesses and see the finance, the figures, and what it takes to do it, they're the people that really, best place to say, okay, yes, we think, that's right for our client or not. For me, I would say a lot of clients at the moment, or a lot of companies at the moment, aren't carbon reporting. I think there's only 11,000 companies that at the moment, don't hold me to this, in the UK that need to be compliant to what we call SECR, which is Streamlined Energy and Carbon Reporting Scheme, which means they need to file their annual accounts, essentially their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. Scope 3 is voluntary. And this is large businesses that turn over more than 36 million with a balance sheet, hit one of the following 2 thresholds. So turnover of 36 million, balance sheet of 18 million, or more than 250 staff. So those businesses, they will be carrying out SECR.
You're talking your Tesco's, your Sainsbury's, your
100%.
Nests, your big corporates, aren't you?
100%. And so for them, they have to do it. Otherwise, they get fined essentially. They'll also carry out something called ESOS as well, which is Energy Savings Opportunity Scheme. And again, looking at how they can lower their energy and fuel demand. There's some complexities there. But so the larger business in the UK, that will very much be mandatory. But smaller businesses at the moment don't need to be compliant. Where they do need to be compliant is if, say, for instance, you're going for a £5 million contract and it's a government contract, you may be hit with the question of, well, under PPN 06/21, have you got a carbon baseline and reduction plan? And so a lot of people that have come to me, particularly over this year, we need a reduction plan that's compliant to that. So it covers our scope 1, 2 emissions, and there's a set criteria for the scope 3. And if they don't do it, and they're going for that tender, other businesses will be ahead of them. So, to retain that contract, to bring on that new contract, is pretty crucial for them types of businesses. A lot of companies as well, if they need funding through certain councils, need to have a carbon baseline, need to a reduction strategy. I've had people now working with Sizewell C say we need to have this in place. As time goes on, it's going to be crucial. At the moment, for smaller businesses, Ben, they don't need to essentially have something in place. But remember this, you're always going to be part of somebody's supply chain.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
So scope 3 emissions. So just think of them companies under SECR that do voluntary report on their scope 3 emissions. They're going to be approaching you and they're going to be saying, well, what are you doing? What's your environmental policy? What's your ESG policy? What are you doing to be more sustainable? And so there are businesses out there that are being asked this question. So it's fresh to some. I had a meeting with actually a manufacturer that had just been asked these questions, didn't need to have a baseline at the time, but just asked these questions. So was very, very surprised and just wanted some help and clarity of essentially what they can, what they need to do, what the next sort of, 2 to 3 years looks like. So yeah, it now is the talking point for it. And I really see over the next 3 to 4 years at least, it's going to ramp up. And just one other thing, I get asked the question all the time, well, those that are mandatory, is that threshold ever going to drop? So, people who, I don't know, with a turnover of 20 million and a balance sheet, let's just say 8 million, are they going to need to, to carbon report? And at this stage, I don't know, but if we are going to hit these net zero 50 targets, there is a long way to go. So I would have thought there'll be some chopping and changing. And believe me, when you're doing yearly reporting, you see some of the government guidelines change, some of the emission factors change. So can be a bit tricky.
Definitely. I see it in my industry, and if there's any accountants watching, we see it when you look at company cars, for example. Every year they update the CO2 thresholds as to what your company car benefits are going to be, and that's just the way of the world. The legislation in every area is always changing. So yes, I feel for you on that one. So obviously we've touched on the fact that you do energy audits. So what does a typical energy audit look like? And what's the most common savings and maybe common surprises? That's a strange one. Common surprises. They're not a surprise if they're common.
Do you know what? So regarding surprises, actually, I'll come to it at the end. So when we're doing our energy audit, we break it down into several areas. So first of all, heating. So how a business heats its premises. And that can very much be sort of the type of technology that you're using, type of fuel, controls, temperature, settings. They all boil down into that. We could talk about, how a heating system, is it lagged? Is it not lagged? We cover heat loss assessments. So really a whole host of sort of areas around that heating setup. Same for cooling. So, how a business cools its premises, a little bit on refrigeration as well.
So I suppose people like restaurants, cafes, butchers, all that sort of stuff.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. And the technologies that they're using to do it, obviously a lot more people are investing in heat pumps and with a reverse valve for the cooling side now. So really understanding that. Ventilation, and I think really to merge all three together, HVAC systems, so heating, ventilation and air conditioning, because really you will come across these types of systems often when on site. So how can we find savings for clients? How can we make them operate more efficiently? Other areas, equipment. So the motors that they're using and the machinery that they're using, the technology, centrifuges, power factoring, which is a really interesting one, which can be used with this equipment. So true power to apparent power. So Ben, just to confuse the audience, we've got true power. So the kilowatt hours, the load that we're using when we're operating that piece of machinery. And then we've got the apparent power, so the kVA that's in that circuit. Often, when we talk power factoring, we're looking for a unity of 1, okay? Just to confuse people, unity of 1, which is basically 100%. So that power that we're using to run that specific piece of technology, we're using that full amount of power, essentially. But if our power factoring is out, we may have it maybe 0.9, 0.8, and really once you go lower, it can mean really operating efficiently. What you're doing is you're creating reactive power. So essentially you're buying energy, you're probably running that specific type of machinery harder. You may have voltage drops, may have overheating, essentially, because you're creating more reactive power. That power factor's off. And the way to look at it, so for the audience, is imagine buying a beer. Now, I know you like a beer, Ben.
I used to.
I
don't anymore.
Buy a beer. So imagine you're buying your beer for £8, and we're in London. And Ben, you come away from the bar, and that barman, they've given you a beer, and it's got a little head on it. And you're like, what? And just imagine you've got that much, and now probably the audience, they're shocked. They're thinking, God, I'm not getting much beer here, but I paid £8 for it, but I'm probably only going to get, let's just say £5.50 worth. Well, £2.50 of that has been wasted. And it's the same for energy. So when we're buying in our energy, if our power factoring's off and we're getting more reactive power, it's energy that is just being wasted. And so this is what you'll see with a lot of equipment. So that's where, efficiency really comes into action.
So I'm guessing, sort of almost if someone's watching and they're not familiar, from my point of view, listening to that would be you're heating your home and you haven't got double glazing, you haven't insulated your home, your power factor could be 0.4.
Well, it's a bit different. It's a bit different. This that you're using essentially more, very energy intensive appliances as such. But yeah, it's
like when you're running a petrol engine against an electric car, I suppose, as well, isn't it? How much energy gets wasted from the fuel that you're burning, and
well, with any scenario, it's how can you waste less energy? But so you may use in these sort of circumstances power correction equipment. Really, that does help. So really, energy intensive manufacturers out there, make sure your power factoring is spot on, particularly if you've got a lot of machinery. It's something that is always key. And then also other parts of audit, so lighting. And this is where, everyone's sitting there, lighting, we're on it, LED. But what's surprising is, I'll go out and the amount of halogen that I'll see, or, inefficient lighting setups, even like the other day, sodium, old sodium. And, there's so many savings to be had from LED. And I think people know it, but it's just that transition. And if you've got, some of the businesses that I'll go into, 200 light fittings, it's unbelievable where the savings can be made. So when we're thinking about return ROIs, sort that lighting out.
Definitely.
And the other thing, Ben, is, and one of my pet hates, you sort of said, what do I regularly see on site is I'll go into warehouses, and I'm often putting this on social media, the amount of times that I see full lighting on throughout the warehouse and nobody in there. in June, and you've got clear skylights providing light anyway, and it's just wasted electric. And that's where really processes and procedures come into play, and that leads us on to the next one. So processes, how do staff manage processes on site to be more efficient? How do the executive team and management team, how do they manage that? Because there are savings to be made from being more savvy. Another area is looking at the energy supplies, looking at the gas supplies, and understanding on the procurement perspective, what they're paying. Again, assessing reactive power charges. So if I'm seeing reactive power charges on bills, I know exactly there's a potential, there's a problem if it's significantly high with the power factoring. So I go back to that. And the other thing covered in audits is existing sustainability initiatives. So understanding exactly what they've got already, because sometimes you may have a piece of equipment, an air source heat pump, for instance. You may think, oh, we've had it for 10, 15 years, but it's in a terrible condition. Rats have eaten all the, started to eat away with
full
pipes
of
and
leaves, full of debris.
and you look in the fans and it's just, so straight away. And often you get, oh yeah, we've had such and such issues. Well, okay, what does that look like? And so there needs to be a little bit more analysis done. But you're often seeing things like that. And I've had one recently where we've just changed and upgraded the system because of that, because it was so inefficient, to increase the coefficient of performance. So yeah, it's sometimes just because people have invested in technology, solar 10, 15 years ago, is it working? Is it have some of the lines, DC lines on the roof, have they been damaged? Because often if they're not installed correctly, that's always, you speak to any solar company, they'll say that's always can always cause an issue. So we'll look at the existing initiatives as well. We'll then produce a document, a report, and support the client on any actions that need to be done accordingly.
And a lot of it is about cost reduction, but it's obviously sometimes it is compliance, it's meeting regulation. But in some cases you can like I say, you can potentially make money by, if you've got a huge warehouse where you don't really need much electricity because it's storage, you can actually make money off it. So yeah, all these things come into play, and as you know, we're all about trying to save people money at Morphy Time, but we like to try and make people money. So this type of thing is perfect for us to refer to clients. So I think you've kind of touched on this already. What are the most common renewables and technologies that people are interested in at the minute?
I think the first one, Ben, I was saying to you this morning, is solar. The solar boom this summer, and particularly, just over the last few weeks of inquiries, it's been incredible. Businesses right now, I think, are going for a real tough. Anyone you speak to, it's they say it's tough out there, and it is. It's really tough out there. But savvy companies are saying, well, okay, where are we spending money? We're spending heavily on the energy, and if you can install a system and, for instance, get return on investment in 3 to 4 years, and that solar really is going to be performing for the next 25, 30 years, maybe even more with the way panels are going. It's a no-brainer. It's going to cut that cost. It's going to allow you to use that capital elsewhere. And people are saying, no, we want to do it. We need, whilst we've got this heat wave, let's utilise it. So solar has really taken off, and I think it's with the systems coming down from where they used to be, amount of installers in the market. One thing there probably isn't as much, and this is what I find, is grant support for solar though. At the moment, it's a lot for other technologies, and that's whether it's boiler upgrade scheme, EV, and that's obviously either because the government are really focusing on transitioning away from fuels to electric-based technologies, but solar. And I'm going to go back, air source heat pumps as well. I've seen a big boom in air source heat pumps. A lot of skepticism about heat pumps, but if you've got your heat loss calculations done correctly, you've got your system sized, and you understand the control element, they can be really effective. And I go back to the boiler upgrade scheme at the moment, which offers an incentive of £7,500 to upgrade to an air source heat pump from a fossil fuel technology, or if it's standard electric or storage heaters. Phenomenal. And that's something that I would say to businesses you really want to be taking advantage of when you can. But make sure you do all that analysis. You work with that right consultant, right installer. There's some great installers out there to make sure that that piece of technology is going to be suitable for that specific building.
Nice. Brilliant. Well, you're clearly very, very passionate. We're just coming into the Queen Mother's Gardens, which is I'm just going to show you. Well, it's a beautiful place right next to my office. Beautiful gardens. So we're just going to go find a seat. We'll have the birds chirping in the background. Go over here. It's nice and shady. It is quite warm this morning. It's not quite 34 degrees warm, but I'll come across over here. So yeah, we're sort of getting towards the end now, but Oliver's obviously very passionate about what he does. I think you can tell that from the conversation we've been having. You obviously started the business because you're so passionate about what you do, which is how most people start the business, isn't it? They see an opportunity, they either see an opportunity or they're really passionate, and I think you're both.
Yeah, I think for me, it's this business. It's all about supporting people in the best way possible. When we think about the energy industry, and again, Ben, I was saying to you this morning, there are, if we break it down, if we talk energy procurement, you've got a lot of road brokers out there. Which people building in high margins and energy contracts, which I hate to see. On the carbon reporting side, you're getting people coming with fancy platforms that are charging extortionate amounts that don't necessarily do what people want them to do. I've had conversations with companies over the last few weeks, months, and some of it has just been terrible. Don't get me wrong, there are some fantastic platforms out there. There are great consultants out there. There really are, but I think we all know that there are some areas that really need improvement. And on the renewable technology side, you've got a lot of installers in the markets now. I talk as that as a real positive. So we're not an installer; we're a technical energy consultancy. But there are also a lot of people who are going into renewable technologies where they could be fantastic electricians, be fantastic plumbers, gas engineers, but they're going into technologies where they don't necessarily understand them. And I think a lot of the time, this is where you're getting some of these horror stories come from. You're getting people cut out health and safety. And I speak to a lot of the reputable installers, and they're saying, who put health and safety at the heart of what they do, share the same values as what we do. But they're being undercut, and it's like a race to the bottom because there are these people coming to market who want to make a quick buck, who are in and out. And I would seriously say to people, if you're getting quotes, make sure you're getting quotes from people who've been in the market long enough, who know what they're doing. If you've got one-man bands, great. Make sure though that they're capable of doing what they're doing and that they're going to be around, because you need that support. But for me, it's about accountability. It's about really making sure that we can advise as a company our clients in the best way through all of energy management. And it's also about transparency. I'm really big on transparency.
What are you most excited about for the next sort of 5 to 10 years? What do you think's coming down the track that's going to be really interesting?
Do you know what? I think technology is completely developing all the time. I see hopefully more solar going in. There needs to be more solar rooftop space utilised. I see that happening. There needs to be more support from the government, more grants in that specific area, because like yourself, you were saying to me, Ben, you would love it on top of your roof.
Yeah.
But we were discussing the reasons why it's just not viable at the moment. EVs, I'd love to see, a lot of people, there's a lot of skepticism about the EV market and what's happening there, and people saying about hydrogen. Really curious to see how that adapts itself, because, as we know, for hydrogen, you need electrolysis. So you need batteries in a vehicle, and you need to use a lot of power to develop hydrogen. Yes, there are some ways, obviously, with methane and other areas, but again, it's not great on carbon emissions. But I'm really interested to see how these markets develop, because a lot of commercial businesses are saying, if we've got to cut our emissions, our scope 1 emissions for our haulage, how do we do that, Oliver? We need the right, I don't know if I can invest in an electric van, and so, or I don't know if, there just isn't technology. Well, if we've got to hit net zero 50. We've got 25 years to develop these technologies and make sure that they work on the ground for businesses. Yeah. So I'm really interested to see how that happens. And any other technologies that come to light. I think wind turbines are great. And I know there's obviously been a lot of issue with wind turbines on the planning side. And there's so many steps that you have to take. But I think really I'm just keen to see how everything evolves over the next 10 to 15 years. Because if we're going to hit net zero 50, these next 15 years, this industry has to be moving.
Yeah, definitely. So fantastic. Well, that's the end of the conversation today, everybody. I want to thank Oliver for taking the time out of his very busy diary. I know you've got lots going on, sharing his expertise, giving us a bit of a deeper insight into what he does and his industry as well, because there's a lot of people who probably won't understand what it is and the purpose of it. A lot of people will just see it as almost a bit of a tick box exercise to get themselves onto a tender. But like with anything, I've been doing some risk management course recently, and a lot of people do a risk management project. They'll produce a risk management report, and then that's it. They don't do anything with it. And that's the big thing I want to say is if you're really interested, get in touch with Oliver, but make sure you then use that report and actually live it and follow through with it and review it regularly, whether that's just yourself or whether you then get Oliver along to check in after 6 months, 12 months, couple of years, just to hold someone, get someone to hold you accountable, isn't it? That's what it is a lot of the time.
Yeah, it is. And you know, if anybody, if people are thinking at the moment investing in technologies, or they've got a couple of questions, you know, always happy for anyone to email me, message me on LinkedIn. You'll find me on there. You know, pick up the phone. Always happy to help, because as I said, I really am passionate in sort of, you know, I like to see businesses doing the right thing. I like to see them as well. I love it as a company when people come back to me and say, do you know what, Ollie, you've really helped us, or do you know what you've issued us has really helped us to manage our energy, or it's really put us forward. And that's why actually I've been really grateful from a lot of testimonials that we've had back recently. So for me, it's, you know, it's all about that impact. So if anybody again has any questions, any queries, needs some guidance, always open.
Fantastic. Thank you, Oliver. Well, if you want to get in touch with Oliver, you can drop him a message in the comments or visit the website nrgsol.co.uk. Drop him a message, and yeah, hopefully you can help some other people.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Good stuff. Okay, so thank you everybody if you've tuned in or if you're watching back on the YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel so you can find out about more conversations that I'm having with other businesses locally going forward. And until next time, we haven't got anyone lined up for next week, so it may just be Ben on the Fen. But if anybody is interested, let me know and we can get you on. But until next time, keep going, keep busy and stay sustainable. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.